The sky above the Shiganshina district did not simply turn dark that day. It shattered. The blue dome that held the sun and the clouds cracked open like a dropped dinner plate. It was not a storm. Clouds usually moved with the wind, but these clouds stopped dead in the air. The birds fell silent. The wind died. A deep and terrible sound rolled over the wall. It sounded like the earth itself was groaning in pain. People in the streets stopped their work. They looked up with wide eyes. They were used to fear because they lived in a cage surrounded by monsters. But they had never seen the sky bleed. A jagged wound opened in the air directly above the town square. It was the color of a fresh bruise. Red lightning did not strike the ground. It crawled out of the hole and clawed at the air. The very laws of nature were breaking. The air pressure dropped so fast that windows in the shops exploded outward. Glass showered the cobblestone streets. Something fell from the wound in the sky. It was not a titan. It was too small to be a titan. It fell like a red stone dropped from the hand of a giant. It screamed through the air with a sound like a tearing sheet. It slammed into the center of a row of houses. The impact shook the ground harder than the footsteps of any giant. A massive cloud of dust and pulverized brick rose up. It looked like a grey flower blooming in the middle of the city. The shockwave knocked people off their feet. Carts overturned. Horses broke their ropes and ran in panic. The soldiers on top of the wall shouted orders that made no sense. They aimed their cannons at the smoke, but they did not fire. They did not know what they were looking at. The smoke swirled and settled. In the middle of the crater lay a broken shape. It was a man, but he was twisted. His suit was bright red and black, a stark contrast to the brown and grey world around him. His limbs were bent at impossible angles. His neck was turned the wrong way. He lay in a pile of rubble and did not move. A titan that had been wandering near the outer gate turned its head. It was a 15-meter class with a wide, frozen smile. It sensed the disturbance. It did not smell the sweet scent of human fear. It smelled something chemical. It smelled something rotten and ancient. The giant walked toward the crater. Its heavy feet crushed the debris. Boom, boom, boom. The sound echoed through the silent city. The titan reached the edge of the pit and looked down. It saw the red thing. It did not understand what it saw, but it was hungry. It reached down with a massive hand to scoop up the broken body. The body in the crater twitched. A wet, snapping sound echoed from the hole. Bones ground against each other. The twisted arm snapped back into place with a violent jerk. The neck straightened. The man in the red suit gasped. It was a desperate sound, like a drowning man breaking the surface of the water. He sat up. Smoke rose from his shoulders. His healing factor was working overtime, fighting against the physics of this new reality. He looked at his hands. They were covered in dust and blood. He looked up and saw the giant hand coming down. He did not scream. He did not make a joke. He felt a cold silence in his mind. The voices that usually chattered in his head were gone. The connection to his own world was severed. He was alone. The titan's fingers closed around him. The soldiers on the roofs turned away, expecting to hear the crunch of bones. But there was no crunch. There was a flash of silver steel. Two swords sliced through the air. The titan's fingers fell to the ground, cut clean off. Steam hissed from the wounds. The titan shrieked in confusion. The red man leapt from the crater. He moved with a speed that defied gravity. He landed on a tiled roof and crouched low. He breathed heavily. His suit was torn, revealing skin that looked like melted wax. He stared at the titan, then at the massive wall in the distance. He realized where he was. He realized the horror of this place was not a story anymore. It was real, and for the first time in a long time, Wade Wilson felt something he thought he had lost. He felt the weight of consequence. The sky above him began to close, sealing him in. The red lightning faded, but the damage was done. The timeline had been infected. Wade Wilson stood on the clay tiles of the roof and watched the steam rise. The giant hand he had just cut was already growing back. He had seen strange things in his life. He had seen aliens and time travelers and wizards, but this was different. The steam smelled like boiling meat. The giant monster did not look angry. It looked like a confused baby that wanted to play with a toy. The problem was that Wade was the toy. He reached for his guns. His holsters were empty. The travel through the dimension hole had taken his ammo. He only had his two swords. They were made of a metal that felt heavy in this air. He looked at the swords. They were chipped. The bone of the giant was harder than steel. Wade looked around the city. It was old. It looked like a history book come to life. The houses were timber and stone. There were no cars. There were no cell phone towers. There was only fear. The giant monster stepped closer. It opened its mouth. Its teeth were flat and wide like a horse. Wade sighed. He bounced on the balls of his feet. He jumped. He spun in the air. He was fast. He was faster than any human in this world. He landed on the giant's shoulder. The skin was hot. It burned his boots. Wade swung his sword. He aimed for the neck. He did not know why. It just felt like the right spot. The blade bit into the flesh. The giant roared. A blast of hot steam knocked Wade backward. He tumbled through the air and crashed through a window. He landed on a wooden table. Splinters flew everywhere. A family was huddled in the corner of the room. A mother and two children. They screamed when they saw him. He looked like a nightmare. His red suit was covered in dust and blood. His face was hidden by his mask, but the eyes of the mask were wide and white. Wade groaned and sat up. He felt his ribs snap back into place. It hurt. It always hurt. He looked at the family. He put a finger to his masked lips. He told them to be quiet. He spoke in English. They looked at him with blank terror. They did not understand his words, but they understood his tone. Wade looked out the broken window. The giant was reaching for the house. Its fingers were fully grown again. Wade realized something important. These monsters did not stop. They did not get tired. He needed a better plan. He grabbed a chair and threw it at the giant's face. It was a distraction. He jumped out the window again. He ran along the side of the building. He defied gravity. He used his momentum to run up the wall. He reached the roof. He saw soldiers coming. The soldiers wore brown jackets. They had a symbol of roses on their backs. They flew through the air on wires. Gas hissed from tanks on their hips. They looked like spiders made of metal and cloth. They saw the giant. They saw Wade. They did not know which one was the enemy. One soldier drew a blade. It looked like a box cutter. He swung at the giant. He missed. The giant grabbed the wire. It pulled the soldier out of the air. The soldier screamed. Wade watched the man get eaten. It was fast. It was brutal. There was no music. There was no slow motion. It was just wet and red. Wade felt a cold knot in his stomach. This was not a comic book fight. This was a slaughter. Wade charged. He did not care about the soldiers. He cared that the monster was winning. He leapt off the roof. He landed on the giant's head. He stabbed both swords down. He twisted them. The giant went limp. It fell forward. It crashed into the street. The ground shook. Wade pulled his swords out. The body began to steam and dissolve. It was melting. Wade wiped his blades on his suit. He looked up. The soldiers were staring at him. They had their swords pointed at him. They were shouting. Wade raised his hands. He tried to tell them he was one of the good guys. He tried to make a joke about the giant's breath, but no sound came out of his mouth. He touched his throat. His vocal cords were healing, but they were slow. The dimensional trip had done more damage than he thought. A cannon fired from the top of the massive wall. The ball of iron whistled through the air. It was not aimed at a titan. It was aimed at the street where Wade stood. The soldiers scattered. Wade looked up. He saw the black dot getting bigger. He did not move. He knew he could not outrun a cannonball. The ball struck the cobblestones 10 feet away. The explosion threw Wade into a brick wall. He felt his spine shatter. He slid down the wall. Darkness took him for a second. Then the pain woke him up. His body was knitting itself back together. He stood up. The soldiers gasped. They saw a man get blown up and stand up. They called him a monster. They called him a demon. Wade ignored them. He heard a sound that was louder than the cannon. It came from the outer gate. A lightning bolt of yellow and gold struck the earth. It was bigger than the red lightning that brought Wade. It was solid power. The shockwave knocked everyone flat. Even the soldiers on the wires fell. Wade looked toward the gate. He saw a hand grab the top of the wall. The wall was 50 meters high. The hand was red and skinless. Steam poured off it. A head rose above the wall. It was a giant among giants. It had no skin. Its muscles were exposed. Its eyes were burning coals. The colossal titan. Wade felt a memory tickle his brain. He had seen this before. In a book? On a screen. It didn't matter. It was here. The colossal titan kicked the gate. The stone exploded. Boulders the size of houses flew into the city. One boulder crushed the house where the family was hiding. Wade felt a sharp pain in his chest. It wasn't physical. It was failure. He had just left them. He started to run toward the gate. He did not know why. He just knew the big red one was the boss. The wind from the kick sent dust sweeping through the streets. Smaller giants began to walk through the hole in the wall. They were smiling. They were hungry. The soldiers were in panic. They were retreating. Wade ran against the flow of the crowd. He saw a blond boy trying to lift a heavy beam. A woman was trapped under it. A dark-haired girl was trying to help. Another boy with brown hair was pulling at the wood. They were children. They were weak. A smiling titan was walking toward them. It had blonde hair and creepy eyes. Wade knew this scene. This was a pivotal moment. If he saved her, everything changed. If he didn't, the story continued. Wade did not care about the story. He cared about the woman. He sprinted. He pushed his muscles past the limit. His legs tore and healed with every step. He reached the house. He grabbed the beam. He lifted. He was strong, but the house was heavy. The beam moved an inch. The woman looked at him. She saw the red mask. She saw the scarred hands. She told him to take the children and run. Wade shook his head. He pulled harder. His shoulders popped. He groaned. The beam lifted enough. The woman crawled out. Her legs were broken. She could not walk. The titan was close. Its shadow fell over them. Wade drew his swords. He stood between the family and the monster. The titan reached down. Wade sliced. He cut the fingers. The titan did not care. It used its other hand. It swatted Wade like a fly. Wade flew across the street. He crashed into a bell tower. The bell rang from the impact. He fell to the ground. He looked up. The titan picked up the woman. The children screamed. Wade tried to get up. His legs were jelly. He watched. The titan bit down. Wade closed his eyes. The sound was terrible. When he opened them, the children were being carried away by a soldier. The blonde soldier, Hannes. Wade lay in the rubble. He failed. He had powers. He had regeneration. He was a superhero. And he failed. He felt a rage burning inside him. It was a cold, hard rage. He stood up. His legs were fixed. He picked up his swords. He ran after the Titan. He did not scream. He did not announce his attack. He just moved. He ran up the Titan's back. He stabbed the nape of the neck. He carved a chunk of flesh out. The Titan fell. It was dead, but the woman was gone. Wade stood on the steaming corpse. The city was dying. Fire was spreading. The Titans were everywhere. Hundreds of people were being eaten. The soldiers were fleeing to the inner gate. Wade jumped from the corpse. He ran toward the canal. He needed to get on a boat, not to escape, but to follow the main characters. He knew the brown-haired boy was the key. He saw the boats filling up. People were pushing and shoving. Soldiers were beating people back with rifles. It was chaos. Wade did not push. He climbed the wall of a warehouse next to the canal. He watched the boats. He saw the 3 kids huddled on a deck. They looked broken. The brown-haired boy was crying. He was swearing revenge. Wade looked at his own hands. They were trembling, not from fear, from the energy of this world. The air was thick with something he couldn't name. It wasn't magic. It was the will of the world itself. It was heavy. It pressed down on him. He felt his healing factor working differently. It wasn't just fixing cells. It was fighting the pressure of this reality. He felt hungry, not for food, for energy. His body was burning calories at a rate that was impossible. He needed to eat. He jumped down from the warehouse. He landed on the roof of the last boat. The soldiers shouted at him. They pointed guns. Wade sat down on the edge of the roof. He held his hands up. He pointed at the Titans breaking through the city. He pointed at the boat. He made a motion of a boat moving. A soldier climbed up. He was an officer. He had a red rose on his jacket. He looked at Wade's mask. He looked at the swords. He asked who Wade was. Wade pointed at his mouth. He shook his head. The soldier hesitated. The boat began to move. The armored Titan appeared at the gate. Wade saw it. It was covered in bone plates. It looked like a tank on 2 legs. It charged. It smashed the inner gate. The wind blasted the boat. The boat rocked violently. Wade dug his fingers into the wood of the roof to hold on. The wall was breached. War Maria had fallen. The territory was lost. The boat drifted down the river. The smoke of Shiganshina rose into the sky. It covered the sun. It was twilight at noon. Wade sat on the roof. The soldiers left him alone. They were too busy crying or staring at the horror. Wade listened to the weeping. He looked at the water. It was dark and murky. He thought about his own world. He thought about his friends. They seemed very far away. He realized that here, jokes didn't land. Here, slapstick was just tragedy. If he got cut in half here, people didn't laugh. They vomited. He had to change. He had to adapt. Night fell. The boat arrived at a landing zone inside Wall Rose. The refugees were herded off. They were given bread, small pieces of dry bread. Wade got in line. He was taller than most people. His red suit stood out in the crowd of brown and grey clothes. People stared. Children hid behind their parents. They thought he was a demon. Maybe they were right. A soldier handling the food saw him. He stopped. He called for backup. 4 soldiers surrounded Wade. They had muskets. They told him to kneel. Wade knelt. He did not want to fight humans. He wanted to kill monsters. A short man with black hair walked through the line of soldiers. He walked with a strange confidence. He held a teacup in one hand. He did not look like a refugee. He looked like a blade that had been sharpened too many times. Captain Levi. Wade recognized him. The short man looked down at Wade. He looked at the suit. He looked at the swords on Wade's back. He asked what Wade was. Wade did not speak. He tapped his mask. Levi kicked Wade in the face. It was fast. Wade didn't even see it coming. His nose broke. He fell backward. The soldiers gasped. Levi did not smile. He waited. Wade sat up. His nose clicked back into place. The blood stopped flowing. Levi's eyes narrowed. He saw the healing. He did not look scared. He looked interested. Levi ordered the soldiers to bind Wade. They used heavy ropes. They tied his hands behind his back. They took his swords. Wade led them. He needed to get inside the military. That was where the plot was. They dragged him to a wagon. They threw him in the back. The wagon smelled of hay and horse sweat. Wade lay in the dark. He listened to the wheels rolling on the dirt road. He was a prisoner, but he was alive, and he was in the game. He closed his eyes and tried to sleep. His dreams were red. The next day, Wade was thrown into a cell. It was made of stone. It was cold. There was a small window with bars. He could see the sky. It was blue again. The nightmare of yesterday felt like a fever dream, but the hunger was back. His stomach growled. It sounded like a wild animal. A door opened. A man with big eyebrows walked in. Erwin Smith, the commander. He was followed by a woman with glasses. Hanger Zoe. She looked excited. She was holding Wade's swords. She looked at the metal. She touched the edge. She spoke rapidly. She said the metal was not steel. It was something else. Carbon alloy. She asked where he got it. Erwin stood silently. He looked at Wade. He was analyzing. He was trying to see the truth. He asked Wade his name. Wade cleared his throat. His voice was back. It sounded raspy. He said his name was Wade. Erwin asked where he came from. Wade said he came from a place far away, a place with no walls. Erwin asked if he was a Titan. Wade laughed. It was a dry, hacking laugh. He said he was something worse. He was a mistake. Erwin did not blink. He asked what Wade wanted. Wade looked at the commander. He looked into those blue eyes that had sent hundreds of men to their deaths. Wade said he wanted to kill them all, every single Titan. Erwin nodded. It was a small movement. He told Hang to unlock the chains. Hanger did it quickly. She wanted to see his skin. She poked his arm. She felt the scars. She asked why he looked like an avocado that had hate sex with an older avocado. Wade stared at her. He almost made a joke, but he stopped. He remembered the mother under the beam. He remembered the sound of the bite. He looked at Hang. He said it was the price of not dying. Hang stopped, smiling. She understood price. Everyone in this world understood price. Erwin offered Wade a deal. He could join the military, but he would be watched. If he betrayed them, if he turned into a Titan, Levi would cut his head off. Wade looked at Levi, who was leaning against the wall in the shadows. Levi fingered the handle of his blade. The threat was real. Wade nodded. He accepted the deal. He needed weapons. He needed targets. He needed a purpose. Erwin gave him a uniform. It was too small. The jacket was tight across his chest. Wade kept his red mask. He refused to take it off. Erwin allowed it. He knew soldiers needed symbols. Wade walked out into the training yard. It was full of refugees who had joined the cadets. He saw the 3 kids from Shiganshina, Erin, Mikasa, Armin. They were younger, smaller. They looked at him. They remembered the red man who tried to save the woman. Erin stared at Wade. There was hate in the boy's eyes, not for Wade, for the world. Wade walked over to them. He stood next to Erin. He looked at the wooden targets. He looked at the wall rows in the distance. He whispered to Erin. He said they would burn it all down. Erin looked up. He nodded. A dark understanding passed between them. two monsters in human skin. The training began. It was brutal. Wade did not need to train his body. His body was already a weapon. He needed to train his mind. He needed to learn how to use the gear. The omnidirectional mobility gear. It was tricky. It relied on balance and weight distribution. Wade was used to simply defying physics. Now he had to work with it. He crashed into trees. He slammed into the ground. He broke his legs 10 times in the first week. Every time he healed. The other cadets watched in horror. They whispered. They called him the Immortal. The instructors were terrified of him. Keith Stohess, the bald instructor, yelled at Wade. He screamed in his face. Wade just stared back. You couldn't break a man who had already been broken into a million pieces. One night, in the mess hall, a fight broke out. Jin, a boy with a horse face, pushed Aaron. Aaron pushed back. Wade sat in the corner eating a potato. It was bland. He missed tacos. He missed chimichangas. He missed flavor. He watched the fight. Mikasa stepped in. She was strong. Stronger than any human should be. Wade watched her movement. He saw the snap of her muscles. He realized she was like him. Not a mutant, but something else. A product of breeding. A biological experiment. He felt a kinship. She was a weapon too. Time passed. 2 years. Wade learned the gear. He became dangerous. He combined his chaotic fighting style with the precision of the wires. He didn't just swing. He ricocheted. He used his body as a counterweight. He learned to use the dual blades. It was natural for him. He was a swordsman. He started to modify his gear. He asked Hang for stronger wires. He asked for a mechanism to release the blades like projectiles. Hang loved the idea. They worked together late at night. Wade told her stories about science from his world. He didn't tell her it was a comic book. He told her it was a place of advanced technology. She drank it in. She wrote everything down. The day of graduation came. Wade stood in the ranks. He was not in the top 10. The instructors didn't know how to grade him. He didn't follow protocol. He killed the targets, but he did it messy. He wasted gas. He broke blades, but he couldn't die. So they passed him. They put him in the Survey Corps by default. No one else wanted him. The military police didn't want a freak in the inner wall. The garrison didn't trust him to stand guard. The scouts were the only place for the insane. They were on top of Wall Rose, Trost District. It was the same setup as Shiganshina. Wade felt the déjà vu. He knew what was coming. He stood next to Aaron and Armin. They were cleaning cannons. It was a peaceful day. The wind was gentle. Wade checked his gear. He had 4 extra blades. He had a hidden knife in his boot. He was ready. Lightning struck. It was the same gold lightning. The same sound of the earth cracking. The colossal titan appeared again. Right in front of them. The steam blast blew the cadets off the wall. Wade anchored his hooks into the stone. He held on. The heat was intense. It melted the skin on his face. He didn't care. He saw Aaron flying through the air. He saw the gate being kicked in. Again. The nightmare was on repeat. Wade pulled himself up to the edge of the wall. He looked the colossal titan in the eye. The giant eye rolled to look at him. There was no intelligence there, only function. Wade drew his swords. He screamed. It was a scream of challenge. He launched himself at the giant face. He was not trying to save the city this time. He was trying to kill the author of this pain. He flew through the steam. He reached the face. He stabbed the eye. The eye burst. Hot liquid sprayed him. The titan did not scream. It moved its hand. It swatted the wall. The stone crumbled. Wade was thrown into the air. He fell toward the city of Trost. He fell past the buildings. He saw the titans entering. He saw the cadets scrambling. He fired his hooks. He swung around a tower. He landed on a roof. He looked around. The breach, the beginning of the war. Wade Wilson cracked his neck. He checked his blades. He looked at the chaos. "Okay," he whispered to the empty air. "Maximum effort." He dove into the streets. The slaughter began. But this time, the food fought back. This time, the timeline had a virus, and the virus was angry. The streets of Trost were a labyrinth of screaming meat. Wade swung past the bell tower, his wires humming with tension. Below him, the cobblestones were slick with fresh red paint. It was not paint. It was the cadets he had eaten breakfast with. He saw Thomas Wagner go down, swallowed whole by an abnormal that moved like a jumping spider. Wade fired his hooks into the Titan's shoulder. The gas hissed, propelling him forward. He spun, blades extended. He severed the nape. The meat fell. But it was too late for Thomas. The boy was gone, just fuel for the nightmare. Wade landed on a slate roof and checked his gas gauges. The needles were dropping. The pressurized gas was the only thing keeping him alive. Without it, he was just a slow, chewy snack. He looked at his blades. They were dull, chipped from striking bone. He snapped the handles, discarding the useless metal, and slotted in fresh steel. He had 2 pairs left. He heard a sound that chilled even his broken mind. It was the sound of air being displaced by massive bodies. More giants were pouring through the hole in the gate. They were not walking. They were running. A 15-meter class with a beard like a prophet sprinted down the main avenue, kicking soldiers like soccer balls. Wade watched a squad of garrison troops try to set up a cannon. The Titan didn't even slow down. It plowed through the barricade. Bodies flew, wood shattered. The cannon spun through the air and crushed a shop front. Wade felt a surge of adrenaline mixed with nausea. In his world, destruction had a rhythm. It had a script. Here, it was chaotic. It was messy. There were no commercial breaks. He saw Armin Arlet sitting on a rooftop, knees pulled to his chest. The boy was frozen. His eyes were wide, staring at nothing. Wade landed next to him. The tiles clattered under his boots. Armin flinched, looking up at the red mask. Wade grabbed the boy's shoulder. He shook him. He needed the tactician. He needed the brain. Armin mumbled something about Eren. He said Eren was gone, eaten, to save him. Wade stopped. The plot was happening. Eren was in the stomach. That meant the transformation was coming. But something felt wrong. The air was too heavy. The static charge he had felt earlier was building up, making the hair on his arm stand up under the suit. A shadow fell over them. Wade looked up. A Titan was peering over the roof edge. It was smiling. Its eyes were wide and vacant. It reached for Armin. Wade didn't think. He kicked Armin away, sending the boy rolling across the tiles. The giant hand closed around Wade. The grip was crushing. He felt his ribs buckle. The air was squeezed out of his lungs. The Titan lifted him to its mouth. Wade tried to draw a blade, but his arms were pinned. He looked into the wet, pink cavern of the mouth. The breath smelled of rotting corpses and sulfur. He saw teeth the size of tombstones. The Titan bit down. Wade screamed. It was not a hero scream. It was a sound of pure agony. The teeth sheared through his waist. His legs fell to the street below. His upper body was swallowed. Darkness swallowed him. He slid down a wet, slimy tube. The heat was unbearable. It was like sliding into a vat of acid. He landed in a pool of boiling liquid. He splashed around, trying to find purchase. His hands touched things, soft things, uniform jackets, helmets, limbs. He realized he was in a mass grave that was still digesting. The acid burned his suit. It burned his skin. It ate at his eyes. Wade gasped, inhaling the toxic fumes. His healing factor kicked in. It was a violent war inside his cells. The acid melted his flesh, and his cancer-ridden cells grew it back. Melt, grow, melt, grow. The pain was constant. It was a cycle of destruction and creation happening every second. He wasn't dying. That was the problem. Any other human would have dissolved in minutes. Wade was a renewable food source. He thrashed in the darkness. He felt a hand grab his wrist. He froze. A voice whispered in the dark. It was a girl's voice. She was crying for her mother. Wade reached out. He touched her face. It was melting. The skin sloughed off under his fingers. He pulled his hand back in horror. He had to get out. He couldn't die here. He reached for his sword handles. The blades were still in the scabbards on his hips, or what was left of his hips. His legs were growing back, slowly, painfully. The bones were knitting, extending from his severed spine. He grabbed the handles. He screamed a war cry that bubbled in the fluid. He slashed blindly. The blades cut through the stomach lining. Light pierced the darkness. A beam of sunlight. Wade hacked at the flesh. He made the hole bigger. He pulled himself out. He fell from the Titan's stomach, crashing onto the pavement. He was covered in steam and bile. He looked like a demon birthed from hell. The Titan roared. It wasn't a roar of hunger. It was pain. It clutched its stomach. Wade lay on the ground, his legs half-formed. He dragged himself backward. He watched the Titan. Steam poured from the wound in its gut. But then, something impossible happened. The steam changed color. It wasn't white, it was black. The wound in the Titan's stomach didn't just close. It bubbled. The flesh knit together with a speed that defied the laws of this world. It healed instantly. The Titan looked down at Wade. Its eyes changed. The vacancy was gone. In its place was a red glint, a spark of madness. Wade had contaminated it. His blood, his cursed mutant blood, had mixed with the Titan's biology. The Titan biology, designed to absorb and regenerate, had absorbed the super cancer, the hyper-regeneration, and the madness of the Deadpool factor. The Titan let out a sound that sounded like a laugh. It was a deep, guttural chuckle. It grew new muscles. Its skin hardened, turning a mottled red and grey. It stepped toward Wade. Wade's legs finished growing. He scrambled to his feet. He was naked from the waist down, his suit shredded. He didn't care. He was staring at a monster he had created. A variant, a Deadpool Titan. The creature moved fast, faster than an abnormal. It punched the ground where Wade stood. Wade dodged, rolling into an alley. The stone exploded. This was bad. This was very bad. He had broken the rules of the universe. He had introduced an invasive species into the ecosystem. Suddenly, a roar shattered the air from the other side of the district. A different roar, raw, angry, and full of hate. A burst of green lightning struck the earth. A Titan with long brown hair and glowing green eyes rose from the steam. The rogue Titan, Eren. Wade watched from the alley. The plot was trying to correct itself. Eren roared and charged the nearest Titans, smashing their heads with brutal punches. But the red variant Titan turned. It saw the challenger. It ignored Wade and sprinted toward Eren. Wade climbed a drain pipe. He needed a view. He reached the roof. He saw the two monsters collide. Eren threw a right hook. It connected with the variant's jaw. The jaw shattered, but before Eren could pull back, the jaw snapped back into place. The variant bit Eren's hand. It tore the hand off. Eren shrieked. He looked confused. Titans weren't supposed to heal that fast. The variant tackled Eren. They crashed through a row of houses. Dust covered the street. Wade looked around. He needed a weapon. A real weapon. He saw a dead soldier hanging from a roof edge by his wires. Wade ran over. He looted the corpse. He took the gas tanks. He took the blades. He strapped them on. He felt the weight of the gear. It was familiar now. He was a soldier of humanity, a soldier who had just doomed humanity. He launched himself into the air. He swung toward the fight. Erin was losing. The variant was relentless. It didn't care about defense. It fought like Wade. It took hits to give hits. Erin punched a hole in the variant's chest. The variant laughed and headbutted Erin. Wade landed on Erin's shoulder. The rogue titan looked at him. There was recognition in the green eyes. Wade pointed at the variant. He yelled. He told Erin to go for the nape, to destroy it completely. Erin roared. He understood. He swept the variant's legs. The monster fell. Erin pinned it. Wade fired his hooks into the variant's neck. He flew in. He spun like a buzzsaw. He sliced the nape. A massive chunk of meat flew into the air. The connection was severed. The variant stopped moving. It began to steam. Wade landed on a chimney, panting. It was over. But the steam didn't stop. It swirled. It thickened. The meat on the ground. It started to crawl. The chunk of nape Wade had cut off was moving. It was growing tendrils. It was trying to reconnect with the body. Wade's eyes widened behind his mask. The immortality had transferred to the weak point. The nape wasn't the kill switch anymore. The Titan was evolving. "Oh, come on," Wade whispered. "That's cheating." Erin saw it too. He stomped on the crawling flesh. He crushed it into paste. He stomped again and again. He pounded the body of the variant until it was nothing but a red smear in the crater. Finally, the regeneration stopped. The energy was exhausted. The threat was gone. But the cost was clear. The rules had been broken. The universe knew. Erin turned his attention to the other Titans. He went on a rampage. He cleared the supply depot. He carried the giant boulder. The mission proceeded as history dictated, but with a darker edge. The soldiers saw the Red Titan. They saw it heal. Fear spread through the ranks. They weren't just fighting giants anymore. They were fighting things that refused to die. The boulder slammed into the gate of Trost. The seal was complete. The soldiers cheered, but it was a weak, terrified sound. They had won, but they had seen too much. Erin collapsed. He was cut out of the Titan nape by Mikasa. Armin was there. Wade watched from a distance. He didn't join the reunion. He knew what came next. The trial. The fear. Wade sat on the wall as the sun went down. The cleanup began. Soldiers were throwing bodies onto carts. Wade looked at his own hands. They were trembling. He felt a burning sensation in his blood. The crossover wasn't stable. His presence was causing ripples. He heard footsteps. He didn't turn. "You did something," a voice said. It was Levy. The captain was covered in Titan blood, but he looked pristine in his violence. He held a blade loosely. Wade nodded. He didn't make a joke. "I got eaten," he said. "It didn't agree with me." Levi stepped closer. "That red one. It moved like you. It fought like a drunk idiot, just like you." Wade looked at Levi. "It's the cancer," Wade said. "It's my superpower. It's contagious, apparently. Only to them." Levi stared at him. The implications were sinking in. If the Titans ate Wade, they became invincible. Wade was the most dangerous thing in the world. Not a savior, a biological hazard. "Then you don't leave my sight," Levi said. His voice was cold iron. "If you get eaten again, I will chop you into pieces so small that you'll fit in a thimble. Do you understand?" Wade nodded. "Loud and clear, Shorty." Levi didn't react to the insult. He kicked Wade in the ribs, hard. Wade grunted. "Let's go." The commander wants to see the monster. Wade followed Levi. They descended the wall. Below, the military police were surrounding Erin. Guns were drawn. The fear was palpable. But this time, they were looking at Wade too. Hang was there, looking at the remains of the variant Titan. She was scraping samples into a jar. Her face was pale. She wasn't smiling. She had seen the biology. She knew what it meant. They were taken to the dungeon, not a cell, a tribunal holding area. Erin was chained in one room. Wade was chained in the next. They were the two anomalies, the boy who could become a Titan and the man who could make Titans immortal. Wade leaned his head against the cold stone wall. He closed his eyes. He saw the red lightning again. He felt the universe shifting. He realized then that this wasn't just a story he had fallen into. It was the immune system reaction. The world of Attack on Titan was harsh, cruel, and finite. Death was the ultimate truth here. Wade was the lie. He was the negation of death, and the world was trying to correct the error. By making the monsters stronger, the Titans could evolve, the enemy could learn, and Wade Wilson was the carrier of the plague. He heard Erin screaming in the next room, proclaiming he was human. Wade stayed silent. He knew he wasn't human, not anymore. He was just a variable in an equation that was spiraling toward infinity. The door to his cell opened. Erwin Smith entered. He carried a torch. The light cast long shadows. He looked tired. He pulled up a stool and sat down. He looked at Wade with the eyes of a gambler who had just realized the deck was rigged. "Hunger tells me your blood is unique," Erwin said quietly. "She says it defies nature. She says what happened today with that abnormal. It was your fault." Wade didn't deny it. "I'm spicy," he said. Erwin didn't smile. "We have a problem, Wade. The king's government wants you dead. They think you are a curse. They want to burn you to ash to make sure you don't infect anything else. I convinced them to wait." "Why?" Wade asked. "Because we are losing this war," Erwin said. "We have been losing for 100 years. Today, for the first time, we took back territory. Because of Erin, and because of you. I don't care if you're a curse. I don't care if you're a demon. I care if you can be used." Erwin leaned forward. The flame reflected in his eyes. "Can you control it? Can you kill them without making them stronger?" Wade thought about it. He thought about the swords, the decapitation, the regeneration. He realized the answer. "I can't just cut them," Wade said. "I have to obliterate them. No pieces left, no cells to learn." Erwin nodded. "Then we need better weapons, and we need to go to the basement. Erin's basement. He says the answer is there. Do you know what is in the basement, Wade?" Wade froze. He knew. He knew about the photographs, the outside world, Mali, the history of Ymir. He knew everything. But if he told them now, would they believe him? Or would it break their minds? If he told them the world hated them, that they were devils on an island, would they give up? "I know," Wade said softly, "but you won't like it." Erwin stood up. "I don't need to like it. I need to know it. You will come with us, you and Erin. We are going to Shiganshina. We are going to take back Wall Maria. And if you create another immortal Titan, I will have Levi bury you in concrete at the bottom of the ocean. Are we clear?" "Crystal," Wade said. Erwin left. The door clanged shut. Wade was alone in the dark. He felt the hunger again, the caloric burn. He needed food. He needed a chimichanga. He needed a gun. He realized that the escalation had just begun. The enemies outside the walls, the beast Titan, Rainer, Bertolt, they would hear about this. They would hear about the Titan that healed like a god. They would come for him. Wade was now a strategic asset and a target. The board had changed. The pieces were moving. And the Red King was in check. The old castle headquarters of the Survey Corps smelled of mold and damp stone. It was a place where ghosts lived in the corners. Wade Wilson sat on a wooden crate in the stable, cleaning his gear. The horses shifted nervously in their stalls. They didn't like him. Animals always knew when something was wrong with nature, and Wade was a walking violation of nature. Levi Squad was outside, running drills. Wade could hear the rhythmic thud of boots and the sharp commands of El Jin. They didn't train with Wade. They trained around him. He was the variable they couldn't calculate. Hunger Zoe burst into the stable. She was the only one who looked at Wade without disgust. To her, he was a fascinating puzzle. She carried a heavy wooden case. She slammed it down on the hay. She opened it. Inside were two massive handguns. They looked like flintlocks on steroids. The barrels were thick iron. The grips were wrapped in leather. They connected to the gas canisters of the omnidirectional mobility gear with reinforced hoses. Hang explained the design. They were not accurate. They were not subtle. They fired canisters of compressed gas packed with iron shrapnel. They were essentially handheld cannons. Wade picked one up. It was heavy. It felt good. Hang told him the rules. He was not allowed to use blades unless it was an absolute emergency. His blood was a contaminant. If he cut a titan and bled on it, the titan became a regenerating nightmare. If he got eaten, the titan became a god. The strategy was containment. Wade was a long-range asset now. The night before the 57th expedition, the mood in the mess hall was heavy. The new recruits were terrified. They wrote letters to their families. Wade sat alone at a table, eating a bowl of vegetable stew. It tasted like dirt. Petra Rao walked over. She was the only member of Levi Squad who spoke to him with anything resembling kindness. She asked him if he was scared. Wade looked at her. He saw the fear in her eyes. He saw the hope. He wanted to tell her that she was a supporting character in a tragedy. He wanted to tell her to stay home, but he couldn't. The narrative had a current, and it was pulling them all downstream. He told her that fear was just a reaction. Survival was a choice. She didn't understand, but she nodded. She trusted Levy. She trusted the formation. Wade trusted nothing but his own insanity. The morning of the expedition was bright and clear. The massive gate of the Karanas district opened. The sun blinded them for a moment. Then the horses thundered forward. The Survey Corps poured out onto the plains. It was a sea of green cloaks. The wings of freedom snapped in the wind. Wade rode near the center, right behind the wagon carrying Aaron. Levi rode next to him. The captain's eyes were scanning the horizon. He told Wade to stay on the horse. If Wade fell off, Levi would leave him. It was a simple promise. The formation spread out. Red smoke flares shot into the sky. Titans were spotted. The right flank was engaging. Wade watched the smoke signals. He knew the code. Black smoke and abnormal. A disruption in the formation. The smoke was getting closer. It was cutting a line straight toward the center. Wade felt the hairs on his arms stand up. The villain was arriving. The ground shook. It wasn't the clumsy stomp of a regular titan. It was a rhythmic pounding, like a runner. A titan appeared over the rise. It was 14 meters tall. It had no skin on its muscles. Its hair was blonde and short. The female titan. She moved with intelligence. She didn't swat at the soldiers. She grabbed their wires. She spun them like yo-yos. She kicked horses. She was a martial artist in a giant body. Wade recognized the fighting style. It was calculated. It was human. The soldiers of the right flank died screaming. They couldn't stop her. She ignored them mostly. She was looking for something. She scanned the formation. Her blue eyes locked onto the center. She saw the wagon. She saw Eren. And then she saw the man in the red suit riding next to him. Her eyes narrowed. She knew. The enemy knew about the Deadpool variable. Reiner and Berthold must have talked. The female Titan accelerated. She sprinted faster than any horse. Levi ordered the squad to enter the forest of giant trees. The massive redwoods towered hundreds of meters into the air. The shade was deep and cool. The horses galloped along the narrow path. The female Titan followed. She crashed through the smaller trees. She was gaining on them. The rear guard tried to stop her. She crushed them against the tree trunks. Blood sprayed the bark. Wade watched the slaughter. His hand drifted to the trigger of his new hand cannons. Levi saw the movement. He ordered Wade to wait. Not yet. They were leading her into a trap. Wade understood the play. Erwin Smith was a cold bastard. He used his own men as bait to lure the target into the kill zone. The female Titan entered the ambush point. Hundreds of barrels opened fire. Harpoons tipped with explosives slammed into her muscles. The wires pulled tight. She was suspended in the air, like a fly in a web. She struggled. She roared. The sound was deafening. Levi ordered the squad to tether their horses and switch to gear. They landed on a thick branch overlooking the trapped Titan. Erwin and Hang were there. They were trying to cut her out, but her skin hardened. It turned into diamond-like crystal. The blades shattered. Wade stood on the branch, spinning his cannons. He looked at the crystal. He knew that material. It was tougher than the walls. It was organic armor. Then came the scream. It wasn't a roar of anger. It was a call, a high-pitched, vibrating shriek that echoed through the forest. It hurt Wade's ears. It disoriented him. The forest went silent for a second. Then the ground began to rumble. From every direction, Titans were running. They ignored the humans. They ignored the horses. They ran straight for the female Titan. They were going to eat her, to destroy the evidence. The soldiers tried to stop the wave. It was impossible. There were too many. The Titans swarmed the trap. They tore into the female Titan's body. Steam exploded, blinding everyone. Wade saw the strategy. She was sacrificing her body to escape in the confusion. Levi ordered a retreat. The mission was a failure. They had lost men, resources, and the element of surprise. And now the enemy was loose in the forest in human form. Levi's squad mounted their horses. They had Eren. They had to get him out. Wade rode with them. He felt a knot in his stomach. The script was broken. In the original timeline, Levi's squad died because they didn't know Annie could transform twice. Here, they were even more on edge. They rode hard. A hooded figure appeared behind them. It moved through the trees with expert grace. It was using the gear. It killed Gunther first. The blade sliced his neck before anyone saw the attacker. The hooded figure landed on a branch. It transformed. Lightning struck the forest. The female Titan appeared again. She was fresh. She was fast. She lunged for the squad. Eren wanted to fight. He brought his hand to his mouth to bite it. Petra screamed at him. She told him to trust them, to trust the squad. Wade looked at Petra. He looked to the Titan. He made a choice. He violated the order. "Trust is for suckers," Wade yelled. He launched himself off his horse. He fired his gas hooks into the tree canopy. He swung backward toward the female Titan. He aimed his hand cannons. He pulled the triggers. Boom! The explosive rounds hit the female Titan in the face. The shrapnel shredded her eyes. She stumbled, crashing into a tree. Wade whooped. He swung around for a second pass. He was going to blind her. He was going to buy them time, but he forgot the rule. He forgot the physics of this world. The female titan didn't just stand there. She hardened her nape. She hardened her fingers. She swung blindly, predicting his trajectory. Her crystallized hand clipped Wade's wire. The wire snapped. Wade lost his momentum. He fell. He crashed onto her shoulder. He rolled down her chest. He was close, too close. He drew a blade, a reflex. He slashed at her neck. His blade chipped the crystal, but he cut himself in the process. A jagged shard of crystal sliced his palm. Blood. His blood. It sprayed onto the female titan's exposed muscle where the skin had been blown off. The reaction was instant. The steam rising from the female titan turned black. She froze. The regeneration factor in her body seized the new genetic material. Her muscles bulged. They twisted. Spikes of bone erupted from her shoulders. Her size increased. She grew to 16 meters. Her blind eyes healed in a second and they opened. They were red. Wade fell to the forest floor. He looked up. He had just buffed the boss. "Oops," he whispered. The super female titan roared. It was a sound that cracked the trees. She didn't chase Eren. She looked down at Wade. She knew he was the source of the power. She wanted more. She raised a foot to stomp him. Levi's squad turned back. They saw Wade on the ground. They saw the monster. They didn't leave him. They were heroes. Stupid, tragic heroes. Petra, Oluo, Eld. They engaged. Their coordination was perfect. They blinded the titan. They slashed the tendons. But the tendons knit back together instantly. The black steam healed everything before they could strike the fatal blow. Oluo went for the nape. His blades shattered on the bone spikes. The titan grabbed his wire. She whipped him into a tree. He exploded on impact. Elle tried to cut her arm. She caught him in mid-air. She bit him in half. Petra was the last one. She was frozen. She was watching her friends die against a monster that couldn't be killed. The titan reached for her. "Move!" Wade screamed. He scrambled up the tree trunk, his legs burning. He fired his last explosive round at the titan's hand. The explosion blew the fingers apart. It saved Petra for a second. But the fingers grew back, like writhing snakes. The hand continued its motion. It swatted Petra. The sound of her spine breaking was a wet snap. She hit the tree. She slid down. She didn't move. Her eyes were open, staring at the canopy. Wade stood on the branch. He was panting. He was covered in sweat and dirt. He looked at the bodies. He looked at the monster he had helped create. The guilt hit him harder than any bullet. He had tried to be the hero. He had tried to change the scene. And he had made it worse. Eren saw it all. He was riding away, looking back. He saw his squad die. He saw the Red Titan standing over them. He screamed, a scream of pure, unadulterated rage. He bit his hand. Lightning struck again. The attack titan appeared. The battle in the forest was a catastrophe of physics. The attack titan versus the enhanced female titan. Eren was strong, but Annie was faster, and now she was regenerating like Wade. She punched Eren's head off. Literally. His titan head flew into the trees. She ripped Eren out of the nape. She held him in her mouth. She turned to run. Levi arrived. He moved like a blur. He saw the carnage. He saw his dead squad. He saw Wade standing on the branch, useless. Levi didn't say a word. His face was a mask of cold fury. He engaged the titan. He was faster than the regeneration. He was faster than the bone spikes. He was a whirlwind of steel. He slashed the eyes. He slashed the ankles. He slashed the jaw muscles. He moved so fast the titan couldn't harden in time. He cut the jaw open. He revealed Eren inside. Levi grabbed Eren. He looked at Wade. "We are leaving." Levi said. The command was absolute. But, Wade started. We are leaving. Levi grabbed Wade by the collar of his suit. He dragged him. They retreated. They left the bodies. They left the forest. The female Titan sat slumped against a tree, steam pouring from her wounds. She was healing, but the energy cost was massive. She couldn't follow. The ride back to the walls was a funeral procession. The wagon carried the wounded and the dead, but they had left bodies behind. Wade sat in the back of a wagon. He looked at his hands. They were healed, no scars, no proof of the damage he caused. 2 soldiers were arguing about going back for the bodies of their friends. They attracted Titans. The formation was compromised. To save the living, they had to dump the dead bodies from the wagons to lighten the load. Wade watched as wrapped corpses were pushed off onto the dirt road. The Titans behind them stopped to eat the dead. It was a distraction, a sacrifice of the dead to save the living. Wade saw Petra's body roll off the wagon. It tumbled into the dust. A 3-meter Titan picked it up. Wade turned away. He felt sick. He had seen horrible things. He had done horrible things. But this world had a cruelty that was suffocating. There was no restart button. There was no editor to retcon the death. They reached the gate of Karanes. The people were waiting. They cheered at first. Then they saw the faces of the soldiers. The cheers died. The crowd murmured. They called them a waste of tax money. They threw insults. Levi rode past them, his face blank. Erin was unconscious. Wade sat in the wagon, his red mask staring at the cobblestones. A father pushed through the crowd. He asked Levi where his daughter was. He asked where Petra was. He said she had written a letter. She was going to dedicate her life to the captain. Levi stopped. He looked at the man. He didn't blink. She fought well, Levi said. That was all. Wade looked at the father. He wanted to say something. He wanted to apologize. But what good was an apology from a monster? He stayed silent. The Survey Corps returned to headquarters in disgrace. Irvin was summoned to the capital. Erin was to be handed over to the military police. Wade was to be confined in an underground vault. The experiment was considered a failure. The Deadpool variable was too volatile. That night, in the vault, Wade sat on the stone floor. He was in chains, thick iron chains that bound his arms and legs, not to keep him in, but to remind him he was a prisoner. Hanger came to visit him. She didn't have her usual energy. She sat on the other side of the bars. The tissue samples from the forest, she said quietly. The ones we scraped off your gear, they show a mutation. When your cells mix with Titan cells, they create a feedback loop. It's like infinite energy, but it burns out the host. That female Titan, she won't be able to maintain that form for long. It will eat her alive. Wade looked up. So I gave her cancer. You gave her mortality, Hung said. Accelerated mortality. She will be stronger, but her lifespan is cut short. The more she uses the power, the faster she dies. Wade laughed. It was a bitter sound. So I am a weapon, just a slow-acting poison. We need to identify her, Hang said. We suspect it is someone in the 104th Cadet Corps, someone who knows Erin, someone who knows you. It's the blonde girl with the nose, Wade said. Annie. Even I figured that out. She fights the same way. She has the same cold eyes. Hunger nodded. We suspect it, but now we have to prove it, and we have to capture her. Inside Wall Sina, in the capital. A fight in the city? Wade asked. That's going to be messy. It's the only way, Hanger said. We are going to set a trap, and you are going to be the bait. I love being bait, Wade said. It's my favorite role. Right after Guy, who gets shot in the face. Hang stood up. She looked at him with a mix of pity and scientific curiosity. "Wade, do you think this world can be saved?" Wade leaned back against the cold wall. He thought about the timeline. He thought about the rumbling that was coming, the genocide, the end of everything. "I think this world is a tragedy," Wade said. "And tragedies don't have happy endings. They just have endings." Hanger walked away. The torchlight faded. Wade was alone in the dark again. But he wasn't sleeping. He was planning. He knew the script was changing. He knew Annie was desperate. He knew the king's government was corrupt. And he knew that he was the only one who didn't play by the rules. If they wanted a monster, he would give them a monster. But he would do it his way. He started to dislocate his thumbs. He needed to get out of the chains. He had a date with a female titan in the city. And this time, he wasn't going to bring a gun. He was going to bring the chaos. The escalation was complete. The quiet war was over. The loud war was about to begin. The streets of Stohess district were going to run red. And Wade Wilson was going to be the conductor of the symphony of destruction. He popped his thumb back into place. He grinned beneath his mask. "Maximum effort," he whispered. Round 2. The cobbled streets of Stohess district were clean, unlike the mud-spattered roads of the outer walls. Here, in the heart of Walsina, the war felt like a distant rumor. People wore fine clothes. They walked with the arrogance of safety. Wade Wilson moved through the shadows of an alley, adjusting the stolen cloak that covered his red suit. He had escaped the vault, not by magic, but by dislocating his shoulders and sliding through the bars like a wet noodle. It hurt, but pain was just information to him. He was a ghost in the machine now, a glitch in the code of this Victorian nightmare. He knew the plan. Erwin Smith was gambling everything on capturing the female titan here, in the city. It was a desperate move that would kill hundreds of civilians. Wade respected the cold calculus of it, but he had his own agenda. He didn't just want to capture Annie Leonhardt. He wanted to break the loop. He watched from a rooftop as the decoy wagon moved down the main street. He saw Armin, Aaron, and Mikasa walking on the sidewalk. They looked tense. Armin was sweating. Aaron looked ready to explode. Mikasa was a coiled spring. They were leading Annie toward the underground tunnel entrance. It was the trap. Wade knew the script. Annie would refuse to go underground. She would figure it out. She would transform. People would die. Wade decided to intervene. He decided to rewrite the scene. He dropped from the roof, landing silently behind a stack of crates near the tunnel entrance. He waited. The group stopped. Annie refused to go further. The conversation was low and tense. Armin was pleading. Annie was smiling that cold, detached smile. She was reaching for her ring, the ring with the hidden blade. This was the moment, the inflection point. Wade stepped out from the crates. He didn't draw his weapons. He walked into the open with his hands up. The cloak fell from his shoulders, revealing the scarred red leather. Passers-by gasped. The military police officers stationed nearby froze. They had heard rumors of the Red Demon, but seeing him was different. He looked like a flayed man walking. Annie froze. Her hand hovered over her ring. She stared at Wade. She had fought him in the forest. She knew what he was. He was the variable she couldn't predict. The man who couldn't die. Wade stopped 10 feet from her. He looked at Aaron and Mikasa. He told them to back off. He looked at Annie. He spoke to her in a voice that was surprisingly steady. He told her he knew about the boat. He knew about the coffee. He knew about the father waiting for her. He knew about Marley. Annie's eyes went wide. The mask of indifference cracked. Panic flooded her face. How could he know? No one within the walls knew those names. Wade took a step closer. He offered her a choice. He told her she didn't have to be a weapon. He told her the script could be changed. He extended a hand. It was a small choice, a moment of mercy in a world of cruelty. He wanted to talk her down. He wanted to save the monster from herself. It was the worst mistake he could have made. Annie didn't see mercy. She saw a threat. She saw a man who knew too much, a man who compromised her mission, her home, and her father's safety. The fear overwhelmed her. She didn't hesitate. She didn't wait for the signal. She moved with the speed of pure terror. She slashed her finger on the ring, but she didn't just draw blood. She carved deep. She wanted power. She wanted enough power to erase this mistake. The lightning that struck Stohess was not the usual yellow. It was tinged with black. The feedback loop from the forest infection was still active in her biology. The explosion was instantaneous and catastrophic. It didn't just blow out the street. It vaporized the tunnel entrance. The shockwave threw Wade backward through a brick wall. He felt every bone in his chest shatter. The building collapsed on top of him. Darkness took him. Above ground, the city screamed. The transformation had devastated the district. A crater the size of a city block smoked in the center of the street. From the steam rose the female titan. But she was wrong. Her skin was darker, streaked with necrotic black veins. Her eyes were burning with a feverish light. She was 16 meters tall and radiating heat that set nearby wooden structures on fire. She didn't run. She didn't try to escape. She turned toward the location where Wade had been buried. She knew he was the threat. She began to dig. She tore buildings apart like wet cardboard. She tossed debris into the crowds of fleeing civilians. Erin was buried under the rubble of the tunnel. Mikasa and Armin had been blown clear but were concussed. The plan was in ruins. There was no trap. There was only a rampage. Wade woke up in the dark. He couldn't move. A massive stone beam was pinning his legs. His lungs were punctured. He coughed blood. He could hear the screaming above. He could hear the heavy thuds of the Titan digging. She was coming for him. He pushed against the stone. His arms were weak. He focused. He needed leverage. He felt the familiar burn of regeneration. His bones were knitting, but the weight was too much. He needed help. Then the rubble shifted, not from above, but from the side. A green flash illuminated the darkness. A roar shook the ground. Erin had transformed. The attack titan burst from the ground, shattering the street. He tackled the female titan. The impact was like a bomb going off. The two giants rolled through the church, crushing the worshippers inside. The stone beam lifted off Wade's legs. He scrambled free. He climbed out of the pit. The scene was hell. Fire was spreading. The military police were shooting useless muskets at the Titans. Erwin Smith stood on a rooftop, barking orders, trying to salvage the operation. But this wasn't an operation anymore. It was a monster movie. Wade checked his gear. His gas tanks were dented but functional. One blade was broken. He had his hand cannons, but he had lost his ammo in the fall. He drew his remaining sword. He watched the fight. Erin was fueled by rage, but Annie was fueled by the corrupted power Wade had given her. She was faster, stronger, and her crystallization was instant. She hardened her fist and punched Erin's jaw off. Erin fell back, crashing into a residential building. Annie didn't finish him. She turned back to Wade. She saw him standing on the edge of the crater. She wanted him dead. She wanted to consume him or destroy him. She didn't know which. She just knew he was the source of the sickness in her blood. She lunged. Wade fired his hooks. He swung low, skimming the ground. He went for her ankles. He slashed. The blade bit deep. Black steam erupted, the tendon severed, but before her foot even hit the ground, it reconnected. Instant healing. Wade cursed. He swung around a building, gaining altitude. He needed a new strategy. He couldn't kill her. He couldn't stop her. Levi was not there. He was injured, sidelined. Mikasa was in the air now, her face a mask of cold fury. She attacked Annie from the blind side. She was precise. She cut the eyes, but the eyes healed before Mikasa could swing again. Annie swatted Mikasa out of the air. Mikasa crashed onto a roof, rolling to absorb the impact. She looked at Wade. For the first time, the strongest soldier looked helpless. The physics were broken. Annie screamed. It was the same call she used in the forest. But here, in the city, there were no titans to call, or so they thought. The scream shattered windows for miles. It vibrated in the teeth of every human. It was a frequency that spoke to the biology of the subjects of Ymir. Wade landed on the wall. The massive 50-meter wall that surrounded the city. He needed high ground. He needed to think. Annie saw him. She ignored Eren. She ignored Mikasa. She ran for the wall. She dug her crystallized fingers into the stone. She began to climb. She was coming for him. Wade looked down. She was climbing fast. The black veins on her skin were pulsing. She was burning out. Her body was consuming itself to fuel the power. If she reached the top, she would escape, or she would kill him. Wade stood on the edge. He looked at the city burning below. He realized that his attempt to talk, his attempt to be the diplomat, had caused this. He had hesitated, and because he hesitated, the infection had spread. He ran to the edge. He jumped. He didn't jump away. He jumped toward her. He fell past her face. He saw the human eyes inside the titan sockets. He saw the terror. He twisted in the air. He aimed for her fingers. He didn't want to cut the flesh. He wanted to break the grip. He slashed at the stone she was holding. The wall was old. It crumbled. Annie lost her purchase. She slipped. But as she fell, she lashed out. Her crystallized hand struck Wade. It didn't crush him. It smashed him against the face of the wall. The impact was brutal. Wade felt his body explode. He was pasted against the rough stone surface. His blood, gallons of it, it seemed, splattered against the wall. The red, cancerous, regenerating sludge soaked into the cracks of the masonry. Annie fell to the street. Eren was waiting. He pinned her. The soldiers swarmed. The capture was happening. But it didn't matter anymore. High above, Wade peeled himself off the stone. He hung by one wire. He was dizzy. He looked at the wall where he had impacted. The stone was wet with his blood. And then, the stone cracked. It wasn't a structural crack. It was something pushing from the inside. The mortar hissed. The brick crumbled. A chunk of the wall the size of a carriage fell away. Wade swung to the side, dodging the debris. He looked into the hole. An eye looked back. It was a giant eye, a titan eye, the wall titans, the millions of colossal titans that King Fritz had used to build the walls. They were sleeping, dormant, waiting for sunlight, waiting for the coordinate to wake them. But Wade's blood was not sunlight. It was something stronger. It was chaotic life. It was a biological override code. The blood seeped into the skin of the titan inside the wall. The titan absorbed it. The cancer factor met the ancient magic. The eye blinked. Wade froze. Uh-oh. The ground began to shake. Not from a fight. From the foundation of the world moving. The wall titan didn't wait for a command. It didn't wait for the sun. It had Wade's energy now. It had the infinite loop. The stone covering its face shattered outward. A massive, skinless face emerged from the prison of the wall. It took a breath. The first breath in 100 years. The soldiers on the ground stopped cheering for Annie's capture. They looked up. They saw the wall breaking. They saw the face. Hanger Zoe, standing near the capture net, dropped her blades. She stared in horror. She knew what was inside the walls. She knew they needed darkness to stay asleep. But the sun was high, and even if it wasn't, the rules had changed. The wall titan pushed. The entire section of Wall Sina, the protective shell of the capital, groaned. A long fissure ran down the surface. With a sound like a mountain snapping in half, the wall exploded. Debris rained down on Stohess. Massive boulders crushed the buildings that had survived the fight. The colossal titan stepped out. It was 60 meters tall. It was burning with heat. But unlike the colossal titan Wade had seen before, this one had red lightning arcing across its skin. It had black veins. It was a variant, a Deadpool-infected wall titan. It didn't look down at the ants. It looked forward. It looked inward, toward the center of the district, toward the king's palace. Wade swung through the dust cloud. He landed on a surviving tower. He watched the giant take a step. The impact knocked people off their feet. The shockwave leveled a row of shops. This was not the rumbling. This was not the coordinated march of millions. This was one rogue god, awake and infected with madness. The other wall titans nearby remained asleep. The infection was localized. It was only the one Wade had bled on. But one was enough. A single colossal titan inside Wall Sina was an extinction-level event for the government. Aaron, still in his titan form, looked up at the new threat. He was exhausted. He was damaged. He roared at the wall titan. The wall titan ignored him. It walked. Boom, boom, boom. It was heading for the densest population center. Wade realized the magnitude of his error. He hadn't just broken the timeline. He had accelerated the apocalypse. The wall titan was awake because of him. It was alive because of him. And it was going to eat the capital because that's what titans did. Erwin Smith grappled up to the tower next to Wade. The commander had lost his calmness. His eyes were wide. He looked at the titan, then at Wade. He saw the blood on Wade's suit. He saw the blood on the broken wall. He connected the dots. "What did you do?" Erwin yelled over the roar of the collapsing city. Wade looked at the commander. He checked his pouches. Empty. He checked his blades. Dull. "I tried to improvise," Wade shouted back. "I hate improvisation." "Can you kill it?" Erwin demanded. "It has your blood. Can you kill it?" "I don't know," Wade said. "It's probably immortal now. It's probably going to grow 2 heads if I cut one off." Erwin looked at the titan. It was raising a foot to crush the military police headquarters. "Then we have to feed it something else," Erwin said. "Or we have to find a way to trap it." "Trap a god," Wade laughed nervously. "Good luck with that, eyebrows." But Wade's mind was racing. The outcome was massive. The secrecy of the walls was gone. The people saw the monster emerging from their protection. The religion of the walls was dead. The government was about to be stomped flat. The civil war that was supposed to happen in the shadows was now happening in the daylight, under the foot of a nuclear giant. And Annie. Wade looked down. Annie had crystallized herself in the chaos. She was safe in her diamond cocoon. She had checked out of the game. Smart girl. The wall titan let out a scream. It wasn't a scream of rage. It was a scream of pain. The mutation was hurting it. The black steam poured off its shoulders. It was radioactive. People in the street were coughing, collapsing. The energy output was too high. It was a walking reactor meltdown. "It's dying," Wade realized. "It's burning too hot. My cancer is eating it." "How long?" Erwin asked. "Minutes? Hours? Who knows?" But before it dies, it's going to turn Stohess into a parking lot. Wade looked at the Titan. He looked at the nape. It was so high up. The heat was intense. No human could get close. The steam would cook them alive. "I have to go in," Wade said. "You'll melt," Owen said. "I melt all the time," Wade said. "It's my thing." Wade didn't wait for permission. He launched himself. He swung toward the burning giant. He was a flea attacking a furnace. He flew through the steam. His skin began to bubble. His suit smoked. The pain was absolute, but he kept going. He aimed for the nape. He didn't have blades strong enough to cut it. He had a different plan. He was the cancer. He was the disease. He needed to be the cure. He reached the neck. The heat was blinding. His eyes melted. He was flying blind. He felt the coarse muscle of the Titan's skin. He latched on. He dug his fingers in. He didn't cut. He pushed. He pushed his own body into the steam vents. He forced himself into the open sores of the giant. He was inserting himself as a foreign object, a blockage. The Titan thrashed. It swatted at its neck. It missed. Wade was inside the steam cloud. He was burning and healing, burning and healing. He screamed a soundless scream. He poured his intention into the flesh. Die. Just die. The Titan took one more step. It stumbled. Its leg gave out. The massive body tilted. It began to fall. It fell forward, away from the palace, toward the open plaza. The impact was like a meteor strike. The earth jumped. Dust swallowed the city. Silence followed. Slowly, the dust settled. The wall Titan lay prone. It was dissolving rapidly. The black steam was dissipating. The bones were crumbling. It was over. The city was half destroyed. Thousands were dead. The secret of the world was out. Wade crawled out of the steaming mess of the Titan's neck. He was a skeleton with some muscle attached. He looked like a biology chart. He lay on the cobblestones, smoking. He watched the sky. It was blue, indifferent. He had saved the capital from total destruction, but he had broken the world to do it. The timeline was shattered. Marley would see this. The world would see this. The countdown to the end had just skipped from 10 to 1. Owen landed next to him. He looked at the skeletal Wade. "Is it dead?" Owen asked. "Yep," Wade rasped, his vocal cords slowly knitting. "And the wall? Broken. And the enemy? Watching." Irvin looked at the hole in the wall. He looked at the terrified populace. He looked at the ruin of his own government. "Good," Owen said, and he sounded like a man who finally had the war he wanted. Wade closed his eyes. The choice was made. The outcome was absolute. Now there was only the convergence, where all the broken pieces had to fit together, or the whole board would flip. "Chimichangas," Wade whispered. I really needed chimichanga. The dust of Stohess had not yet settled when the world ended for the second time that day. Wade Wilson sat on a pile of broken masonry, his suit hanging off his body in tatters, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The light was blood red, filtering through the haze of pulverized limestone and evaporated Titan flesh. The silence that had fallen over the district was unnatural. It was the silence of a people whose reality had been snapped in half. The hole in Wolsina was a jagged wound, a testament to the lie that had kept them safe for a century. Inside the darkness of the wall, the faces of other colossal titans were visible, sleeping giants exposed to the cooling air. They did not wake. The infection Wade had introduced was localized to the one he had touched, the one that had died screaming. But the fear was not localized. The fear was a contagion that moved faster than any virus. Erwin Smith stood nearby, his green cloak grey with dust. He was watching the military police, the King's Guard, throwing down their muskets. There was no chain of command left. The king was a figurehead, and the real power, the secretive council, had no answer for a god walking out of the wall. The government had collapsed in the span of an hour. There were no orders coming from the interior. There was only panic. Civilians were trampling each other to get to the boats, to get to the open fields, to get anywhere that wasn't near the walls. They looked at the stone now, not as a shield, but as a cage filled with sleeping monsters. Irwin looked at Wade. His eyes were hard, calculating the remaining variables of humanity's survival. He asked Wade if he could do it again. Wade laughed, a wet, hacking sound. He said he was empty. The cancer in his blood was fighting a war on two fronts, healing his own body and trying to metabolize the Titan energy he had absorbed. He was running on fumes, but the enemy did not care about fumes. On the roof of a half-collapsed clock tower, 300 yards away, two figures watched the chaos. Rainer Brown and Bertolt Hoover. They were covered in soot, their uniforms torn. They had watched the female Titan fall. They had watched the wall Titan rise and die. They had seen the Red Demon break the laws of their world. Rainer was shaking. It was not fear. It was the fracturing of his mind. He had been a soldier, a warrior, a hero, and a mass murderer. The cognitive dissonance was tearing him apart. He looked at Bertolt. He said they couldn't wait for the coordinate. He said the timeline was poisoned. If they didn't act now, the Red Demon would infect everything. Marley would burn. The world would burn. Bertolt tried to argue, to suggest a tactical retreat, but Rainer was already gone. The mask of the soldier had fallen away, leaving only the desperate, terrified child who wanted to be a hero. Rainer walked to the edge of the roof. He looked down at Eren Yeager, who was being pulled from his Titan form by Mikasa. Rainer called out. His voice carried over the ruins. He didn't use codes. He didn't use signals. He simply stated the truth. He told Eren that he was the armored Titan and Bertolt was the Colossal. He said they wanted Eren to come with them. If Eren came quietly, they wouldn't have to destroy what was left of the city. The sheer absurdity of the confession froze the air. Eren looked up, dazed, blood streaming from his forehead. He thought it was a joke, a sick, exhaustion-induced hallucination. But Wade heard it. Wade knew the script. This was the reveal. But it was happening in the wrong place, at the wrong time, with the wrong emotional weight. It was rushed. It was messy. Mikasa moved first. She didn't hesitate. She launched herself off the ground, blades drawn. She flew at Rainer and Bertolt. She was a blur of lethal intent. She slashed Rainer's arm. She slashed Bertolt's throat. Blood sprayed, but she missed the kill. Rainer pushed her back. He looked at her with sad eyes. The yellow lightning crackled around him. It sparked around Bertolt. Wade screamed for everyone to get down. He dove behind a slab of concrete. The transformation was a nuclear event. The blast wiped out the remaining structures in the plaza. The wind pressure alone turned human bodies into mist. A golden dome of light expanded, consuming the clock tower, the streets, and the sky. When the light faded, the armored Titan stood in the ruins, steam hissing from its plating. Next to it, only half-formed because of the energy drain, was the colossal Titan. It was missing its legs, anchored to the clock tower by massive ribs. It was a skeletal god of heat. Rainer roared. He charged Eren. Eren was blown back by the explosion, but he was still conscious. The rage took over, the blind, unthinking rage that drove the attack Titan. He bit his hand. The green lightning struck. The attack Titan rose to meet the armored. They collided in the center of the crater, The sound was like two mountains crashing together. Reiner's armor was heavy, invincible against blades. Aaron's fist shattered against the plates. Reiner punched Aaron in the face, sending teeth flying. It was a brawl of heavyweight monsters. Wade peered over the concrete slab. He saw Hang Zoe rallying the survivors. She was screaming orders to the Thunder Spear squads, experimental weapons developed from the technology Wade had described. They were crude metal tubes packed with gunpowder and shrapnel. They were dangerous to the user, but they were the only thing that could crack armor. Wade checked his own gear. He had one sword, no gas, no guns. He was a pedestrian in a war of gods. He needed a ride. He saw Levi limping through the dust. The captain's leg was injured from the forest, but he was still moving. He was grappling up toward the colossal titan. He was going for the kill. Wade ran. He didn't run away. He ran toward the armored titan. He had to disrupt the fight. He knew Reiner was a grappler. He knew Reiner relied on his armor to ignore damage. Wade had to give him damage he couldn't ignore. He scrambled up a pile of rubble that overlooked the fight. He waited for Reiner to lunge. When the armored titan exposed its neck, Wade jumped. He didn't aim for the nape. He aimed for the joint in the armor at the shoulder. He plunged his sword into the soft tissue. Reiner roared, but not in pain, in annoyance. He reached up to swat the fly, but Wade wasn't just stabbing. He was bleeding. He had cut his own hand on the blade before driving it in. He was injecting the variable. The cancer blood mixed with the titan fluid. The reaction was not instantaneous like with Annie. Reiner's armor was too dense. It contained the reaction, but the heat began to build. Inside the armor, the tissue started to boil. Reiner felt a burning sensation spreading from his shoulder. It felt like acid. He stumbled. Aaron saw the opening. He didn't punch. He grappled. He used the techniques Annie had taught him. He locked his legs around Reiner's head. He twisted. The armor on Reiner's neck cracked. Bertold, from his perch on the tower, saw his friend in trouble. He couldn't move, but he could burn. He began to emit steam. It wasn't just hot air. It was a superheated shock wave. The soldiers trying to attack him were blown out of the sky. Their gear melted. Their skin blistered. Levi was forced to retreat, shielding his face with his cloak. The heat wave rolled over the plaza, setting fires to the debris. Wade, clinging to Reiner's back, felt his suit melting. He felt his skin sloughing off. He held on. He was the tick that wouldn't let go. Then the ground shook with a new rhythm, a heavy, loping gait. From the breach in the wall, from the outside, something was coming. It wasn't a titan. It was an army of them. But leading them was a nightmare. A 17-meter titan covered in dark fur. It had long arms that dragged on the ground. It walked like an ape. The beast titan. Zeke Yeager had arrived. He had felt the awakening of the wall titan. He had come to investigate, and he had found the chaotic finale of the world. The beast titan stopped at the edge of the ruins. He looked at the fighting titans. He adjusted his glasses, actual glasses that he had manifested or kept. He looked at the armored titan struggling. He looked at the colossal titan burning, and he looked at the red smear clinging to Reiner's back. Zeke was a scholar. He knew about the source of organic matter. He knew about the paths, but he had never seen anything like Wade. He picked up a handful of crushed stone. He squeezed it into a ball. He wound up his long arm. He threw. The pitch was perfect. The sound barrier broke. The stones flew like grape shot. They shredded the air. They hit Aaron and Reiner. The impact blew both titans off their feet. Reiner's armor shattered on his left side. Aaron's arm was torn off. Wade was hit by a piece of shrapnel the size of a dinner plate. It took off his head. Wade's body went limp. It slid off the armored Titan and fell into the dust. His head rolled a few feet away. The eyes on the mask were still white, staring at the sky. Zeke roared. A command. The pure Titans he had brought with him swarmed the city. They were not mindless. They were directed. They ignored the warriors and attacked the soldiers. It was a massacre. The Survey Corps was exhausted, depleted, and outgunned. They were fighting on the ground without trees or buildings to swing from. They were being eaten. Jean Kirstein, Sasha Brous, Connie Springer. They fought back to back in the ruins. They were screaming, covered in blood. They were children forced to die for a truth they had just learned. Hunger Zoe was firing the thunder spears, blowing heads off Titans, but there were too many. The beast Titan stood back, throwing more rocks, suppressing any attempt to counterattack. He was controlling the board. Wade's headless body lay in the rubble. Inside the severed neck, biology was screaming. The cells were frantic. They pulled resources from the bone marrow. They consumed the muscle. A spinal column began to sprout from the neck stump. It looked like a white snake searching for its home. It reached out. It found the head. It pulled. The head snapped back onto the body with a wet crunch. Nerve endings reconnected. Synapses fired. Wade gasped. Dirt filled his mouth. He spat it out. He sat up. He checked his neck. It was stiff. He looked around. The situation had gone from bad to apocalyptic. The Beast Titan was the game changer. He was the artillery. He was the general. Wade realized that this was the convergence. If they lost here, humanity within the walls was extinct. The warriors would take Eren, kill the rest, and leave the island to rot. Wade stood up. He felt a strange vibration in his chest. The connection to the world was shifting. The cancer he carried wasn't just a biological anomaly. It was a narrative anomaly. He was a character from a genre where the hero never truly loses, trapped in a genre where everyone loses eventually. He had to weaponize that contradiction. He couldn't outpower them. He had to out-crazy them. He saw Levi. The captain was crouching behind a broken wall, bandaging his leg. He looked at Wade. There was no judgment in his eyes anymore, only a grim acceptance of the tool at hand. The monkey, Levi said. He's the problem. He's got a hell of an arm, Wade said, cracking his knuckles. Major league material. I can't get close, Levi said. The open ground is a kill zone. If I use the wires, he snipes me. If I run, the small titans get me. Wade looked to the beast titan. Then he looked at the thunder spears hanged drop near them. He looked at the layout of the ruins. He had an idea, a stupid, suicidal Deadpool idea. Throw me, Wade said. Levi frowned. What? Fastball special. You know, Colossus and Wolverine? Never mind. You have the strength. You use the wires to spin, build momentum, and you throw me. I'm the distraction. I'm the pinball. While he's looking at the flying red idiot, you flank him. Levi looked at the distance. It was 500 meters. I'll break your spine. It grows back. Everything grows back, except my dignity. Levi stood up. He grabbed the back of Wade's harness. He didn't hesitate. He didn't give a speech. He fired his hooks into two separate anchor points on the ground to create tension. He spun. He used the torque of his entire body. He released. Wade flew. He broke the sound barrier. The air rushed past him. He was a red missile screaming profanities. Zeke saw him coming. The beast titan looked confused. A human was flying at him without wires. It didn't make sense. Zeke raised his hand to catch the projectile. Wade drew his sword in midair. He curled into a ball. He hit Zeke's hand. The sword sliced through the giant palm. Wade didn't stop. He crashed into the beast titan's chest. The impact turned Wade's bones to jelly, but he had enough momentum to drive the blade into the fur. He hung there, a broken ornament on a giant sweater. "Hello there," Wade gurgled, blood pouring from his mouth. Zeke panicked. He grabbed at his chest. He tried to pull Wade off, but Wade dug his fingers into the fur. He started to regenerate instantly, his body locking up, becoming a rigid irritant. He stabbed the beast titan in the pectoral muscle repeatedly. It wasn't lethal, but it was annoying. It was distracting. And that was all Levi needed. While Zeke was pouring at his chest, Levi moved. He used the gas. He flew low, weaving through the pure titans. He was a ghost. He reached the beast titan. He fired his hooks into the leg. He sliced the hamstring. Zeke collapsed. The massive ape fell to one knee. Levi didn't stop. He flew up the back. He spun. He sliced the arm that was trying to grab him. He sliced the eyes. Zeke was blind. Levi reached the nape. He cut. He ripped Zeke out of the titan body. He threw the bearded man onto the ground and shoved a blade through his mouth. "Don't move," Levi hissed. The pure titan stopped. Without the beast's command, they became confused. The coordination broke. In the center of the plaza, the battle had shifted. Reiner, seeing Zeke fall, lost his will. Aaron, sensing the weakness, headbutted Reiner again. The armor on Reiner's face shattered completely. Hang and the squad fired the thunder spears. 4 of them hit Reiner's nape. The explosion blew the armor off. Reiner was exposed. Mikasa flew in. She cut Reiner out. She threw him to the ground next to the defeated armored titan. Bertolt, the colossal, was alone. He was immobile. He saw his war chief defeated. He saw his partner captured. He made a choice. He didn't surrender. He decided to end it. He began to glow brighter. He was going to self-destruct. He was going to release all his energy in one massive thermal explosion that would wipe the city off the map. "He's going to blow," Armin screamed. Wade peeled himself off the dissolving beast titan. He flopped onto the ground next to Levi and Zeke. He saw the colossal titan turning white hot. "We have to go," Levi said. He grabbed Zeke. He grabbed Wade. Everyone retreat. But they couldn't outrun the nuclear blast. Not with the wounded. Not with the exhaustion. Wade looked at the glowing giant. He looked at the soldiers. He looked at the timeline. If Berthold exploded now, everyone died. The story ended. Game over. Wade sighed. He stood up. His legs were shaky. "I hate this part," Wade said. He ran toward the colossal titan. "Wade!" Hank screamed. "Come back." Wade ignored her. He sprinted. He dodged the confused pure titans. He reached the base of the clock tower. The heat was already melting the stone. Wade fired his one remaining hook. It latched onto the colossal's ribs. The gas tank sputtered. It had one burst left. Wade triggered it. He shot up into the air. He flew into the blinding light of the colossal titan's chest. He didn't attack the nape. He didn't attack the eyes. He attacked the core. He dove into the exposed ribs. He plunged into the burning heart of the titan. He wrapped his arms around the massive, beating organ of fire. His suit vaporized. His skin vaporized. His muscles burned away. He was a skeleton hugging the sun. But he didn't die. The cancer cells went into overdrive. They fed on the radiation. They absorbed the heat. Wade became a heat sink. He drew the energy into himself. His body grew, mutated, popped, and reformed 1,000 times a second. He was a biological singularity. He forced his own chaotic life force into the orderly destruction of the Titan energy. He contaminated the explosion. Instead of a blast of fire, the colossal titan burped. A wave of black sludge erupted from its mouth. The heat dissipated instantly. The reaction was smothered by the biomass of Wade Wilson. The colossal titan groaned, its energy neutralized. It crumbled. The skeletal frame collapsed. Bertolt fell from the nape, unconscious, steaming, but alive. Wade fell with him. He landed in a pile of black, viscous goo. He was a charred lump. He looked like a briquette. Silence returned to Stohess. The soldiers slowly came out of cover. They saw the 3 warriors defeated. Zeke, Reiner, Bertolt, captured. They saw the titans dissolving. They saw the city in ruins. But they were alive. Levi walked over to the pile of goo. He nudged it with his boot. Wade. The briquette cracked. A white eye opened. Chimichanga. A raspy voice whispered. Levi let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. But there was no cheering. The cost was visible. Half of the Survey Corps was dead. The city was gone. The secrecy of the world was shattered. And as the smoke cleared, they looked at the horizon. Far in the distance, beyond the walls, the sky was dark, not with night, with airships. Marley had sent a second wave. The failure of the warriors had triggered the contingency. A fleet of Zeppelins was approaching the island. They had seen the energy signatures. They knew the coordinate was active. They were coming to bomb the island into oblivion before the rumbling could start. Owen Smith stood on a piece of the broken wall. He looked at the approaching fleet. He looked at his battered soldiers. He looked at the captured enemy shifters. He realized the war had changed. It wasn't about Titans anymore. It was about the world. Wade regenerated enough to sit up. He looked at the airships. He saw the tech. He saw the bombs hanging from the racks. Wade muttered, his jaw clicking into place. The bad guys bring the heavy metal. The soldiers looked to Irwin. They waited for orders. But Irwin was looking at Wade. You said you knew the future, Irwin said. I did, Wade said. But we broke it. This isn't the script. In the script, you guys get a few years of peace. You get to see the ocean. You get ice cream. And now, Wade looked at the fleet. He looked at the captured Zeke Yeager, who was glaring at him with pure hatred. He looked at Erin, who was staring at the sky with a new, terrifying resolve. Now, Wade said, standing up, naked and burnt, but healing fast. Now we skip to the end of the world. No ice cream. The first bomb fell from the lead airship. It whistled through the air. It struck the ground a mile outside the wall. The explosion was small compared to a Titan, but it was a promise of industrial war. Eren Yeager walked to the edge of the wall. He looked at the enemy. He didn't scream. He didn't rage. He turned to Levi. Give me the injection, Eren said. Give me the serum. I need to eat the beast. Levi looked at Eren. He looked at the syringe in his pocket. He looked at Irwin. No, Wade interrupted. If he eats the beast, he gets the royal blood connection. He starts the rumbling, right now, and we all die. Then what do? Hanging asked. We can't fight airships with swords. Wade looked at the captured warriors. He looked at the technology on the ships. He looked at his own regenerating hands. We don't fight, Wade said. We leave. Leave? Owen asked. Leave the walls? The walls are a target, Wade said. They are a bullseye. We have the shifters. We have the power. We leave the cage. We go to the forest. We go underground. We become the monsters in the dark. We make them afraid of the island. It was a radical shift. The abandonment of the walls. The end of the society they knew. But looking at the ruin of Stohess, looking at the sleeping titans exposed in the breach, looking at the bombs falling, they knew he was right. The age of walls was over. Irwin nodded. He gave the order. Gather the survivors, secure the prisoners. We are moving out, to the giant forest. The retreat began. It was somber. It was desperate. They left the civilians to scatter into the countryside. They took the horses, the wagons, the gear. They dragged the warriors in chains. Wade walked to the rear of the column. He found a tattered cloak and wrapped it around himself. He looked back at the city. The airships were getting closer. They would carpet bomb the empty shell of the capital. He had saved them from the Titans, only to deliver them into a world war they weren't ready for. There was no clean victory. There was only survival. And the knowledge that he was stuck here. His teleporter was broken. His fourth wall breaking was just madness to them. He was a soldier of the Survey Corps now. He touched the hilt of his sword. Maximum effort, he whispered to the wind. The sun set completely. The darkness took the island of Paradise, and in the dark, the eyes of the Titans glowed, waiting for the command that would surely come. The story was off the rails, and Wade Wilson was the only one enjoying the ride. The ink on the page was not black. It was a dark, muddy brown, mixed from soot and water. Armin Arlet sat by the light of a glowworm lamp in the caverns beneath the forest of giant trees. Above them, the ground shook rhythmically. It was not Titans. It was the carpet bombing. The Malian airships had been pounding the interior for 3 months. Wall Sina was a broken ring of stones. The king was dead. The nobles were dead. The population had scattered into the wilderness, hiding in the shadows of the mountains, learning to live like rats. But rats were hard to kill. Armin finished writing the entry in the logbook. He didn't write about hope anymore. He wrote about logistics, ammo counts, food rations, the number of thunder spears produced in the makeshift forges. He looked across the cavern. It was a hive of activity. The Survey Corps had ceased to be a military branch and had become a resistance cell. They wore mismatched armor. They carried scavenged weapons. In the corner, Levi Ackerman was sharpening a blade. He sat in a wheelchair, his leg shattered beyond repair, but his eyes were still the sharpest things in the room. He was the strategist now. The executioner role had passed to someone else. Beside him sat Aaron Yeager. Aaron was shirtless, his body covered in scars that steamed faintly. He wasn't angry anymore. The rage had burned down into a cold, black slag of resolve. He held a syringe in his hand, toying with it. The serum taken from the Rice Chapel. They hadn't used it yet. They were saving it for the endgame. Deep in the back of the cave, in a cage made of reinforced crystal, a technique tortured out of Annie Leonhardt, sat the 3 warriors, Zeke, Rainer, and Berthold. They were emaciated. They were kept weak. Every time they tried to heal, Wade was there. Wade Wilson walked the perimeter of the cage. His suit was a patchwork of leather, Titan skin, and duct tape. He looked less like a superhero and more like a scavenger lord. He held a bucket of water. He threw it on Rainer. He made a joke about hydration. Rainer didn't laugh. The warriors were broken. They had seen the true face of Paradise. It wasn't an island of devils. It was an island of survivors who had been given a cheat code. Wade walked over to Armin's table. He picked up an apple. It was shriveled. He took a bite. He looked at the book. He told Armin that in the original draft they would be seeing the ocean soon. Armin looked up. His eyes were hollow. He asked what the ocean looked like. Wade chewed thoughtfully. He said it looked like a lot of water that didn't care if you lived or died. Armin nodded. That made sense. The ocean was just another Titan. A scout ran into the cavern. She was breathless. She reported that a Malian ground patrol was entering the forest. They had tanks, primitive, clanking metal beasts. Wade smiled beneath his mask. It was a terrifying smile. He grabbed his dual hand cannons, now modified to fire armor-piercing bolts made from Titan crystal. He whistled. The sound echoed through the cave. The new Levi squad stood up. Mikasa, Joan, Connie. They looked hard. They looked lethal. They didn't salute. They just checked their gear. Wade led them to the tunnel exit. He paused at the threshold. The light of the burning world outside filtered in. He looked back at the darkness of the cave. He realized that this wasn't a crossover anymore. It was a fusion. The morals of the comic book universe had died, suffocated by the cruelty of the anime world. And the hope of the anime world had been strangled by the cynicism of the comic book anti-hero. What was left was something new, something dangerous. Wade stepped out into the light. He didn't break the fourth wall. There was no one watching anymore. The audience had fled. There was only the war. He racked the slide of his cannon. The Red Devil of Parodies went to work. The timeline was darker, bloodier, and completely ruined. But it was theirs. And God help anyone who tried to cancel it now.